Hey there, I'm Lindsay Zarniak. Welcome back to NASCAR Race Hub. So this part of the show is where I check in with drivers to see how they're doing during this off time waiting to get back on track. William Byron has one of the more unconventional stories of his journey to Cup Series racing. Today I check in with him from his apartment in downtown Charlotte. William Byron, it's great to see you. How are you holding up right now?
I'm good. I'm just in my kitchen at my apartment. I live in Charlotte. I actually grew up in Charlotte, and just moved to this apartment a couple years ago when I started in the Cup Series. So yeah, it's been good. It's obviously a tough time for everyone, but I think that I found some things to do and just honestly tried to stick to racing and trying to watch, trying to get into different kinds of racing, whether it's watching or iRacing, obviously, but. I've enjoyed that part of it.
So wait, you're the first person that we've talked to that's been in an apartment. So what's apartment living like during this time?
Well, it was pretty interesting. The first week that went by, everything was normal for a couple of days, and then I think it got to the weekend, and a bunch of people, I guess, were at home, so the internet was really bad, and like there was a lot of people around the lobbies, and they eventually kind of closed all that down. So I can't really go anywhere. I can't even go to the gym at my own apartment right now. So it's just kind of honestly just staying inside. I have a balcony, which is great. So I go outside some. Other than that, though, I've tried to take up cooking.
So when you do try to take it up, what is your attempt of choice?
Oh, it's brutal. I can make a frozen pizza and maybe some break and bake cookies. That's
Nice.
that's about the extent of it. I can, you know, I can obviously make a cold sandwich, but that's about it.
How are you staying in touch with your race team?
So that's a good question. We have a group me that we use. Chad loves to use that group me. So we all talk in
Why
that.
doesn't
We
that
actually
surprise
have
me?
we have one for. I know he's very organized. So we have one for like the real, we call it the real 24 team, and then we have one for the virtual 24 team. So so
Wait, what
you
does
know we
that
have
mean?
so the virtual 24 team. I mean, we just kind of talk about you know what we're doing for fun and kind of off topic stuff, but mostly centers around iRacing. But we talk about off topic,
Okay.
stuff going on.
No, but that's a good idea. So you've got them very separate. So what are some of the topics that you guys have had on the virtual 24 meeting?
Well, we talked about everyone had to send a picture of their sim rig that they got going. So there was a bunch of different philosophies and ideas on that. Um, I've got a connection with Logitech, so they actually supplied a couple of wheels and stuff
Oh, that's
or
cool.
I at least suggested that for my guys to go get. So they worked on that, and then really just kind of talking about that we had that big storm the last couple of days, so everyone was staying safe with that. So there's really not much to talk about, but we try to just have fun with it.
What about on the racing side, on the real 24 team meet? What kinds of things are you guys still trying to keep up on?
Yeah, the guys are working really hard to just work on simulation stuff, which is obviously a lot of the engineering side of the sport now. So they're just working on setups for a long time. Like basically throughout the summer, they're trying to plan out everything setup wise that we're going to run throughout the summer races. So really just trying to get ahead of time with that, because I think practice when we do get back will be pretty limited. We might have some races that we just unload and qualifying race. So they're just trying to get the setups right for that.
How vital is Chad in this type of situation? Because I would think that if there were a crew chief, I would want to be able to follow during this time. He's got to be the guy. I mean, he's like, to your
Yeah.
point, so organized, right? What has that
Yeah.
been like?
Yeah. I mean, I really don't worry a lot about his job because I feel like he does such a good job preparing. He's a workaholic, everyone knows that. And I think he during this time, I picture him always like thinking and always like having some thought on his mind for the next race, what he wants to do with the car. So I know he can't get hands on with the car. I know he can't be at the shop, but I do think that he's like thinking all the time about it. And he's done it for so long. which I really admire about him. He's done it for years now, and really, I think a break for everybody's good, but especially for him because he's been traveling nonstop for 19 or 20 years. So I think it'll be refreshing for everyone. I feel refreshed in the fact that there's some things you learn about racing when you're kind of taken out of the pressure and the competition immediately right in front of you. So that's kind of good too to have some ideas that you kind of want to apply when you get back to racing.
One of my favorite questions to talk about with athletes is what makes them tick. I'm really fascinated by it. So, what have you discovered? What is it for you?
Yeah, for me, I work really well when I am kind of in a zone. It's funny when I race with my tongue out, which is kind of interesting. I never realized that. And I think sometimes some of my best races have come when my mouth is really, really dry halfway through the race. And it's so dry that like I can't even like drink anything. And so it's interesting, like you learn those things about yourself, just what like gets you in that focused mindset to make you successful. It's kind of neat to think about it. You know, it's hard to think about those things sometimes when you're in the heat of battle.
Any hobbies that you've taken up during this time that you've had away?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty OCD, so I just before we got on this call, I was actually organizing my whole apartment. So it bugs me when everything's like all over the counter and stuff. But hobbies, I think I've tried to play. I mean, my friends have invited me to play golf. You know, I think I tried to take up golf, but it's just too frustrating for me. So I can play like every now and then, but I'd say walking. I've done a lot of walking outside. Try to be outside as much as possible.
It sounds like William's doing a great job keeping in touch with his race team. I would love to weasel my way into that virtual 24 team chat. I don't know about you. One thing I do find really interesting is the fact that William's career really started through iRacing, and that was about 9 years ago. So he's an encyclopedia when it comes to virtual racing. We're going to talk more about that when we return. Welcome back to NASCAR Race Hub. iRacing is becoming extremely popular and is new to a lot of NASCAR drivers, but William Byron has been doing this for years, and he is passionate that this is not a game, but true virtual racing. So William, how did you first get into iRacing? When was it?
Yeah, I actually got in. So it says 8 years ago, 8.5 years ago on my iRacing account when I get on. But it was 2012, and honestly, I vividly remember when I first got into it, but I know what got me into it, and that was Dale Jr. talking about it. I think he had a press conference or something, and he was just talking about how great of a tool it was. So I was inspired by that, and then I just started driving on there, creating my own paint schemes, working with all the tools on there, and really just kind of became a project for me to learn. I had always been a huge race fan, so up until that point, I had been going to races with my dad all the time, and that was kind of my way of getting into it as a driver and seeing if I could do that.
So what was your immediate impression?
Immediate impression was it was really hard. I think immediately I was like, "Wow, there's a lot that I have to learn." But I think I won. I think I won some races pretty early on, and things just started to click. And that clicking of like what it felt like to drive a fast lap or what it felt like to run a really complete and good race was kind of stuck with me, and that's what gave me that bug to try to continue racing. And then over time, I won a lot of races on there, and eventually was like, hey, I really need to try to get into a real race car of some sort to see if I can. I just honestly wanted to see if I could do it.
What do you remember about the first time you got in an actual race car and took a spin? How different was that?
Uh, Super intimidating. I was not. If you ask anyone that was there, I think there were a couple people that I still keep in touch with that were there. This guy Jimmy Baker that worked at U.S. Legend Cars in Concord. He he was trying to just get. My dad basically just was like, okay, go figure it out. Like it was a driving school. And I just remember not being able to use the clutch. And so I just kept stalling it and like, just awful at using the clutch. But once I got on the racetrack, everything was like normal for me. So it actually went really well once I got on the racetrack, but it was crazy.
What don't people know about iRacing?
So I think what people don't know is probably how much work goes into it. I don't know how many employees iRacing has. I've actually never gone up there, which I really want to soon. But there's a lot of work that they do behind the scenes to make the tire model wear out and get hotter, and have the tires actually build heat like a real tire would, and then wear differently based on how much heat is in the tire. And yeah, so I think there's a lot of realistic pieces of it that once maybe from the surface it doesn't look that way, but when you really start to race on there, you realize that.
What do you think about the guys that have gone from racing now to iRacing? How have they been doing?
Well, I'm most impressed with Kyle Busch. I think he's done a great job, which is kind of no surprise. I think he's a really quick learner, and I think he's really motivated. So he's been on there a lot. I'd say Jimmy Johnson is definitely coming along super well. I got a text from him recently that, he said that, he was running pretty fast laps at Richmond. So I think those two guys, are top talents in the sport, and they learn things really quickly. So I'll be interested to see how they do here soon.
So I want you to show us your rig, and while you're taking
Yeah.
us there, can you tell me what the importance is of eating the right breakfast before you iRace?
Yeah, so the breakfast deal is kind of funny because when I'm racing, on a normal Sunday at the track, my team kind of cooks something for me. My bus driver Ryan actually helps with that. So it's funny now. It's my responsibility. So I just took on the breakfast thing because the start time of the race is a little bit early for me. So I like to have a good breakfast.
Nice. All right,
So
what do you got?
so here's my rig. So I'm gonna try to show you guys. It's got 3 screens. The screens really help because it keeps everything like in your peripheral. You're able to see it all. And then there's like the pedals down here, the wheel. It's pretty neat. There's like the pedals back here, and yeah. So there's the pedals and all that set up.
It's intriguing to me too. Like this was part of sort of your unexpected plan, right? Like you were hoping
Yeah.
that by starting this, that maybe one day you would be where you are. But it is pretty fascinating when you kind of describe it and say that the way you brought your parents into the sport and all of it, it's pretty awesome that it played out the way it did.
Yeah, it's wild. I never thought that everything would kind of come full circle like this with the way it's gone virtual and all of that is crazy. So it's as
Yeah.
wild for me as it is probably the new guys, just to know that now it's actually there's actually some merit to it that can be out there. So it's pretty cool.
All right, so we're gonna play a quick game, fact or fiction, about
Okay.
iRacing, the iRacing version. Okay. Fact or fiction, William? Is it better to drive barefoot?
Fiction. I drive with my racing shoes. My team guys actually went in and from one of their homes and got my racing shoes this week so I can race with the actual ones. So yeah, I think it's fiction to race. I don't know why you would race barefoot.
Uh, Fact or fiction, hydration is not important.
Fact. That's not critical at all. There's been days that I go without eating. And I'm on
So
there,
you could like have a beer and be iRacing.
you could, yeah. Yeah, I think honestly sometimes it might help.
Okay, a real spotter is better than a virtual spotter, fact or fiction?
I would say my real spotter Tab's pretty good. I'm gonna give him a shout out for that. He's actually helping me with some iRacing stuff, so he's no, he does a really good job. I think that's fact, I guess.
Well done. All right, internet connections can affect the race.
Oh, fact for sure. It's that was the biggest struggle when I first got into it. Don't use wireless. You got to have a wired connection for sure.
Okay, setting up your car takes hours, fact or fiction?
I'd say fiction for what we're doing on the NASCAR stuff. Everybody's setup's the same. So, but for the guys that actually do setups, it takes a lot of time. So, fiction for us on the NASCAR side.
Okay. The better the rig, the better you drive.
Fiction. I know some guys that kick my butt sometimes with about a $200 wheel.
Qualifying is harder on iRacing than on a cup track.
Fact. It's
Really?
I'm so nervous. Yeah. It's because you can't make any contact with the wall or else it disallows your lap. So it's very tense.
Now wait, so when you say you feel nervous, like you really, really get nervous? Like as though you're really racing a race?
Yeah. Yeah. Just because it's like, qualifying is always nerve wracking to begin with, but you don't have the sound of the engine and adrenaline to kind of overcome the nerves. You just
that's
have
interesting.
you're just kind of standing still, so all that nerves kind of builds up in your system.
You're making me nervous talking about that, like when you describe it. All right, it is hard to let other drivers know you're aggravated with them in iRacing.
Fiction. I think it's easier because everyone talks on the chat, and usually things get pretty funny on there. Because one guy will be mad at another guy, and then everybody else hears it, so it's actually pretty comical.
It is easier to ignore your crew chief.
Fact, for sure. I could, if I really wanted to, I could crew chief myself on there.
You don't ignore your crew chief, do you, in real life?
No, never.
I didn't hear you. What? All right. Post-race interviews are more fun. Fact or fiction?
Fiction. I think you guys interviewing at the tracks a lot better than virtual interviews.
Oh, thank you. Good answer. So iRacing was William Byron's path to cup racing, and I don't know of a better example of something that seemed so meant to be. By the way, when he got to cup racing, William's childhood idol, Jimmy Johnson, became his teammate. How does that happen? We're going to talk more about that when we come back. Welcome back to NASCAR Race Hub. Can you imagine making your first Cup Series start and your childhood hero is now your teammate? That's exactly what happened for William Byron, and trust me, he understands fully how special that was. William, I love when you posted recently a younger version of yourself wearing the Jimmy Johnson hat, right? What was it like for you to go from Jimmy Johnson, being a fan of him, to being his teammate?
Yeah, that was really cool. I mean, I think that the first interaction I had with Jimmy was when I was running in the truck series. I was next to him at a media day, and he was answering questions, and I was answering questions, and I was kind of shell shocked by that. I think that it's been really cool to have him as my teammate because I feel like everything's kind of come full circle, and just to have him as my idol growing up, and then to now be able to learn from him. It's so cool. I think it's definitely one of the things I'll look back on later in life and be really pretty excited about.
How did you get over being starstruck? Because I would think that would be really hard.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, I think anyone will tell you when you start running in the Cup Series, you have to get over it pretty quickly because I think, my rookie year, like I learned a lot about, those guys and how they race. And you just have to get past that starstruck. That's why it's one of those things that I'll probably look back on later on and think about how cool it was. But right now it's kind of, you're kind of in the heat of the battle.
How much of a fan were you of his growing up?
A huge fan. I went to every race I went to, I had a 48 hat on. And I think, honestly, every race I went to, that he was my guy. So I remember almost all the paint schemes that he ran.
Wow.
It's crazy to think about. I can remember almost everything.
What was the thing that has surprised you? I would assume you pretty much knew a lot about him, but what surprised you even more that you didn't expect once you got to really know him?
I think just how nice he is. How genuinely nice, and he really wants the best for other people and the sport. I think that's unique. I think a lot of guys look out obviously for their themselves or their team. He's one of those guys that has the ability to kind of do both.
What was it like for you, would you say, to have to start the season and then have to stop? Like what was the biggest challenge with that for you?
It's very weird. I mean, we had definitely gotten into a rhythm of racing, and you know, it's just weird. It's like you kind of like I had done a lot of racing. I had tested the next gen car. That was kind of on my mind to think about how that was going to go. I think that we had a few races. It just there was a lot going on, so it's crazy to think about for sure.
It's been awesome to talk to you. Before we let you go, do you have any message that you want to share with your fans about your time, any perspective that you've gained, or about looking down the road?
hmm Well, I think honestly for the fans, just appreciate their support. I think it's cool to see how they've really embraced the iRacing side of things. And really, I just hope that we can get back to racing soon. I think it's going to be awesome when we do. I think it's going to be really fun for them to watch because there's going to be a lot of races. It's going to be pretty fun.
Awesome. Thanks so much, William.
Yeah,
Good luck to you.
absolutely. Thank you,
Enjoy
guys.
the apartment.
Yeah, yeah, it's awesome.
I'm with William. I know everybody's looking forward to finally being able to get back on the track and go racing, but it is cool to hear the drivers' perspectives on how much they appreciate the fan support even during this virtual racing. I'm going to continue to bring you conversations like these behind the scenes with our drivers as we wait to get back on track. Each night, you can check them out on Race Hub at 6 on FS1. I'm Lindsay Zarniak. Thanks for watching.